Hello dear students, I wish to welcome you all for our series on geography. Today we are discussing about the population theories. Right from the rise of human civilization, the scholars did not agree on the population growth. While some of them argued a continuous increase in population for the survival of human species, races and nations, the others believed that the fast growth of population had been the cause of disappearance of many civilizations from the earth's surface. It is therefore quite appropriate to give a historical overview of population growth. The Chinese philosopher Confucius argued that a numerical balance be maintained between population and environment. He was the first who gave the concept of optimum population theory. In ancient Greece, the earliest thinkers favored the expansion of population, but Plato was a restrictionist who advocated as absolute limit of population. Aristotle and Polybus attributed the fall of Hellenic civilization to the decline in population growth. Different scholars analyze population growth and its impact on world in different manners. Therefore, in this episode, we can study the topic under different headings which gives the views of many economists. They are Malthusian theory of population, the demographic transition theory, Marxian theory, optimum theory of population and criticism of the optimum population theory. Firstly, Malthusian theory of population. In 1798, Malthus published an essay on the principles of population. By analyzing the then prevailing situation in different countries, Malthus initiated a debate about the connection between population and food resources that continues to this day. His premise was that food is necessary for the continuation of life and procreation is also necessary for the continuation of life. Necessity of food for human survival is to continue. Similarly, the passions between the sexes are to continue and both are natural necessities of life. But the two necessary factors of human life grow at different rate. Means population size increases geometrically, that is 2, 4, 8, 16, 32 like that. The food supply increases arithmetically, that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and so on. Population size therefore always pushes against the limits of food supply needed to support the population. There is a limit to increase the food supply by bringing more land under cultivation, but there is also a limit to that. With the existing rate of growth, the population was expected to double every 25 years. For such a high growth rate of population, human beings should adopt such measures to check the growth of population. Main points of Malthusian theory. Thomas Malthus warned that population growth would exceed resource growth, leading to catastrophic checks on overpopulation. This would occur because population grew exponentially while food supply grew arithmetically. Without population control, the population would be reduced by catastrophes such as famine or war, according to Malthusian theory. As a solution, Malthus urged moral restraint. People must practice self-restraint, sterilization and have criminal punishments for those who have more children than they can support. Malthusian catastrophes refers to naturally occurring checks on population growth such as famine, disease or war. These Malthusian catastrophes have not taken place on a global scale due to progress in agricultural technology. However, many argue that future pressure on food production combined with threats such as global warming make overpopulation a still more serious threat in the future. Next is the demographic transition theory. The demographic transition theory is a generalized description of the changing pattern of mortality, fertility and growth rates as societies move from one demographic region to another. The term was first coined by American demographer Frank W. Notteston in the mid-20th century, but it has since been elaborated and expanded upon by many others. There are 4 stages to the classical demographic transition theory. Stage 1, pre-transition, which is characterized by high birth rates and high fluctuating death rates. Population growth was kept low by Malthusian preventative and positive checks. Stage 2 is early transition. During the early stage of transition, the death rate begins to fall. As birth rates remain high, the population starts to grow rapidly. Stage 3 is late transition. Birth rates start to decline, the rate of population growth decelerates. Stage 4 is post-transition stage. Post-transitional societies are characterized by low birth and low death rates. Population growth is negligible or even enters a decline. According to Thomas Malthus, population growth is limited by available resources. But if that's so, why is the world's population growing so rapidly in the regions those have the fewest resources? To some extent, this mystery can be explained by the demographic transition theory. The demographic transition is a model and theory describing the transition from high birth rate and death rates to low birth and death rates that occurs as part of the economic development of a country. As countries industrialize, they undergo a transition during which death rates fall but birth rates remain high. Consequently, population grows rapidly. This transition can be broken down into 4 stages. There are 4 stages in the demographic transition. During the pre-industrial stage, high birth rates are balanced by high death rates and population size remains fairly stable. Today, the least industrialized nations are in this demographic stage. During the stage 2, the stage of increasing industrialization, the death rate falls primarily because of the improved sanitation, hygiene and medical condition. The birth rate, however, remains high because of the continued influence of traditional values favoring large families. Having several children ensures survival of at least some of them when infant mortality is high. During this stage, the imbalance between the falling death rate and the high birth rate results in high population growth. At the 3rd stage, the transitional values give way to modern values favoring family planning. Birth rates decline as a result of later ages of marriages, urbanization, industrialization, rising aspirations and other factors. The mortality rate eventually stabilizes at low levels and birth rate follow. The shift from the high to low mortality and fertility is known as the demographic transition. Although the pace and paths of decline vary tremendously among countries, the demographic transition emerged as the dominant model of demographic change. At the 4th stage, the birth rates fall to about the same level as mortality rates. With births and deaths at similar levels, the equilibrium of slow population growth is regained. The pace of change in a country varies depending on its culture, levels of economic development and other factors. Many developing countries are in intermediate stage. Many low fertility countries have entered second demographic transition. This transition has been linked with greater educational and job opportunities for women. Third one is Marxian theory. Karl Marx was a German philosopher and he is regarded as the father of communism. He did not separately propose any theory of population, but his surplus population theory has been deduced from his theory of communism. Marx opposed and criticized the Malthusian theory of population. According to Marx, population increase must be interpreted in the context of capitalistic economic system. A capitalist gives to labor as wage a small share of labor's productivity, and the capitalist himself takes the lion's share. The capitalist introduces more and more machinery and thus increases the surplus value of labor productivity, which is pocketed by the capitalist. The surplus is the difference between labor's productivity and the wage level. A worker is paid less than the value of his productivity. When machinery is introduced, unemployment increases and consequently a reverse army of labor are created. Under these situations, the wage level goes down further, the poor parents cannot properly rear their children, and a large part of the population becomes virtually surplus. Poverty, hunger and other social ills are the result of socially unjust practices associated with capitalism. Population growth, according to Marx, is therefore not related to the alleged ignorance or moral inferiority of the poor, but is a consequence of the capitalist economic system. Marx held that poverty and unemployment were not due to increased population, but on due to capitalist system which failed to provide jobs. Surplus population was a consequence for real production and uneven distribution of wealth and for providing jobs to only few persons. Marx points out that landlordism, unfavorable and high man-land ratio, uncertainty regarding land tenure system and the like are responsible for low production in a country. Only in places where the production of food is not adequate does population growth become a problem. Marx and Engels reacted very strongly against Malthus' population theory, which they saw as an apology for the status, and all throughout their work they referred to Malthus in a very ironic and disdainful manner. Marx's analysis shows that population is the dependent variable. Whenever the reserve army of labor is relatively depleted and the levels of wages tend to rise, reducing the rate of surplus value, the capitalist class will adopt measures which will increase the productivity of labor, and the rate of profit will render obsolete a number of jobs. Next is the optimum theory of population. Modern economists have rejected the Malthusian theory of maximum population, which if go beyond will spell depression in the country. Instead of the maximum population, the modern economists have substituted the idea of optimum population. By optimum population, it means the ideal number of the population that a country should have considering its resources. The optimum means the best and the most desirable size of the country's population. When a country's population is neither too big nor too small, but just that much which the country ought to have, it is called the optimum population. Given a certain amount of resources, state of technical knowledge and a certain stock of capital, there will be a definite size of population at which real income of goods and services per capita will be the highest. This is optimum size. The optimum number can therefore be defined as the one at which per capita income is the highest. If the population of a country is below the optimum, that is below what it ought to be, then the country is said to be underpopulated. The number of the people is insufficient to take the fullest possible advantage of the natural and capital resources of the country. This is what happens in a new countries. Their resources are vast, much can be produced, but there are not enough men to carry on the work of production efficiency. However, if the population still goes on increasing and the optimum is exceeded, then we shall have a state of overpopulation. There will then be too many of people in the land. The resources will not be sufficient to provide gainful employment to all. Per capita income will diminish, standard of living will fall, war, famine and diseases will be constant companions of such people. These are the symptoms of overpopulation. Superiority of optimum population theory over the Malthusian theory of population. Malthusian theory is applicable only to overpopulated countries, but optimum population theory is applicable to all countries irrespective of their economic condition. Malthusian theory is pessimistic because it predicted a gloomy picture about mankind preoccupied with misery, vice, droughts, diseases and other natural calamities. Optimum population theory is on the other hand optimistic in its approach. According to Malthus, every increase in population is bad, but optimum population theory considers that every increase is good or bad depending upon the natural resources of the country. Malthus was worried about securing a minimum subsistence level for the individual, whereas the exponents of the optimum population theory are concerned with securing a maximum per capita income for the country's population. Malthus believed in the operation of the law of diminishing returns, but the exponents of optimum population theory consider the possibility of increasing returns up to the point of optimum and decreasing returns only after the point of optimum is reached. Malthusian theory is static because it applies to a period, but optimum population theory is relatively dynamic since it admits the possibility of changes in per capita income with change in capital, natural resources and technology. Malthusian theory is narrow in outlook because it relates population with food supply. Optimum population theory, on the other hand, is wider in its outlook because it links population with the wealth of the country. The Malthusian theory of population views man as a consumer and ignores his role as a producer, but the optimum population theory recognizes both these roles of man. It is a question of reconciling the two levels of man. Coming to criticism of the optimum population theory. The outcome of optimum population theory is a sharp reaction to the Malthusian theory of population. This theory was argued first by Professor Sidgwick in his reputed book Principles of Political Economy. However, it was popularized by Carr, Saunders, World Population. The other notable contributors to this theory are Dalton, West, Cannon and Robbins. In spite of its superiority over Malthusian theory, the optimum population theory has its own share of drawbacks. They are the assumption that the proportion of working population to the total population remains constant as population increase is not correct. The theory is silent over distributional aspects of income, which is more important. The theory gives too much importance to economic aspects at the cost of social and political aspects. Adam Smith rightly says defense is better than opulence means wealth. The concept is merely sensitive. Even if optimum population is desirable, it can be achieved only through changes in social, economic, religious, political and cultural backgrounds. The theory ignores the eugenic aspect of the people. It is difficult to determine the optimum size of population. Difficulty in the measurement of per capita income poses serious practical difficulties. The per capita income based on national income may not be accurate and precise. The theory is not useful in forming state policies to stabilize the level of employment, income and output in a country. The theory fails to explain why population growth is high in some countries and low in other countries. Dalton's formula of adjustment is not useful to determine the optimum size of population. Optimum is not fixed. Optimum is not a fixed and rigid number but a moving one. Given the amount of natural and capital resources and the state of technology, there will be a definite size of population at which per capita real income is maximum. But the amount of capital, natural resources and the state of technology are subjected to changes. When the technology improves or the new resources are discovered, the optimum level of population will also change. In a narrow sense, this theory is not a theory of population because it does not explain why population grows or what determines the birth and death rates. This theory is in the form of normative statement which attempts to define an economically ideal size of population for a country. Finally, we can conclude the session. In this episode, you learn how population change could be calculated using geographic equipments and facts. You people also learned about the different theories assumed by scientists like Malthus, Marx about the causes of population growth and its effects on the Earth's environment. Although food production in different world regions has generally increased at similar rates, there has been much more variability in the rate of population growth from place to place. In countries where populations are growing rapidly, there is some concern that this growth threatens the local availability of resources. Indeed, some scientists warn that the Earth has a carrying capacity that limits the number of people that the environment can support. But not all scientists share this view, whereas some point out that the environment doomsday scenarios that were predicted many decades ago have failed to materialize. Others believe the world's poor are the victims of the global economy that distributes power and resources unequally. Anyhow, all of us should be concerned about our Earth either by controlling population or by other means.